This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 83, where we are looking at Luke Cage, episode 9, DWYCK.
You think I'm holding back? You think I'm holding back? I'm out to save you.
Welcome back, Defenders, to this episode of Luke Cage, episode 9, where we are looking at DWYCK or DWYCK. We're not entirely sure, but I think there's a lot of history behind these 5 letters. This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 83, and I am one of your hosts, John.
There's a lot of history behind our podcast now. 83 episodes in, guys. Did you imagine that in a year and a half?
Yeah, it's kind of... Are we wasting our time? Is anyone there? Are we just talking to space?
Are you listening?
Hello? No, of course. Thank you so much.
Yes, we know there is. We know there is because they come over and join us on their Facebook group over on facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV Podcast. They join us over on Twitter @DefendersCast and occasionally send in feedback to feedback@DefendersTVPodcast.com. Did you like how I worked that in?
Absolutely.
Obviously, I am also one of your hosts, and my name is Derek.
And rounding out the group, I'm Chris. I randomly shout things from the back.
we are the 3 DWYCKs.
Should we get into that now? One of my points every week is usually what the song means and what the connection of the Gangstar song is to the title of the episode. This episode's called DWYCK, after the Gangstar song. Should we get into what it's called?
I think we should, because in opening up the podcast, I was like, do I just go DWYCK or do I go DWYCK? And of course, when I started to think about that, I went, DWYCK sounds rather like
I love that we still have our swear jar in play. Yes, I did look up, trying to find out what is the meaning of DWYCK. Great little interview with Guru, who is one of the lead singers, I guess, or writers for Gangstar, where he's interviewed, and the question he's asked is, on the internet they say DWYCK means do what you can, kid, and his response is, that's a great meaning. I wish that was the actual meaning for it. It's just a term we used to express our jokingly calling our male genitalia DWYCK, is what he says. So yes, it is.
We'll leave that silence hanging there. Yeah, well, there we go.
But there is a connection to the episode, a really good one that Chris found. I'm going to give him credit for this one, but I'm going to take it as my own point, of course. So it is the moment where Simone Missick's Misty Knight is sitting opposite the interrogator, I guess, or the psychologist in the interrogation room. He brings her in a drink, which is a can of lemonade, hands it over to her and says, lemonade's a popular drink. And she goes, it still is. That line is directly taken from the song DWYCK by Gangstar. So that's the connection. Basically.
That's fantastic.
And there's also the other big connection in the fact that we don't see Luke Cage's DWYCK at the end of the episode. He's clearly naked and it's covered up. So that's obviously the other connection for the episode.
Actually,
that is true. It was there with a big metal plate over it.
Well, maybe that's melded to him now because of the acid.
Maybe.
But we get ahead of ourselves.
Absolutely. In fact, we are absolutely upside down, back to front and topsy-turvy, because normally we would go into our 5 points, but we've kind of done one earlier, a bit off track. It's obviously coming into Strange season because we're all going, woo, bending reality and time around the podcast, so that I'm sure we'll be starting with our last points first, and our first point shall be last, as the Bible once said.
Or as Diamondback once said.
Or as Diamondback once said. Yeah, but if you are new to the podcast, we're not normally this crazy at the start. Or are we? Maybe we are. We go through our 5 points for good, for bad, or for indifferent of each episode of Luke Cage. And at the end, we say whether we defend or not this episode of Luke Cage. And of course, in addition to all the places where you can come and join us to discuss, comment, and give feedback on each episode of Luke Cage, or the series as a whole, or on the podcast, you can also send feedback in directly to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com, or leave a 90-second voicemail. You know you want to. We and our listeners would like to listen to the dulcet tones of one of our listeners. providing comments and some discussion. So go on. You know you want to. But I think without further ado, Derek, what are some of the production details for this episode?
Well, this episode was directed by Tom Shankland, another British director for the show. He has done shows like The Leftovers. He did 3 episodes of House of Cards. And here's his Marvel connection. He worked on the show The Fades, which starred Ian DeCastiger from Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, yes. Terrible show. Great actor.
Excellent show. Really enjoyed it.
No. Sorry, dude. This is where we'll diverge.
It's a great show. I was pity it didn't get a second season because it did set up itself for a second season.
Yeah.
I actually talked to Ian DeCastiger when I met him at the Star Fury convention about Fades, hoping that, saying that the only reason I didn't enjoy the success of S.H.I.E.L.D. is that he can't come back and make season 2 and cover off the cliffhanger that was left at the end of season 1.
And he's like, well, I'm a much more successful show.
Like,
I'm earning lots more money. I'm sorry.
he was quite polite about it, I must say. Pretty cool. And the episode was written by Christian Taylor, who's written a TV show called Eye Candy, which I haven't seen, but he did write 15 episodes of Star Wars The Clone Wars. He wrote an episode of Lost, and wrote 3 episodes of one of your favourite shows, John, 6 Feet Under.
Sweet Christmas. Or sweet 6 Feet Under.
Definitely.
Just to mix it up even further, that might explain why the Luke Cage acid bath did look like something out of Star Wars, maybe. It did look like Darth Vader was going to stand up and go, no.
Oh, no.
Or, it was the kind of carbonite, the encasing of Han Solo in carbonite. It just with the lights, the bubbles, the atmosphere.
I got that too. Yeah,
it really had a sense of Star Warsiness about it for me.
Yeah, that must have been Christian Taylor's work on Clone Wars then.
Yeah.
I was just expecting the thumb to come out and it'd be like, I love you. I know.
Terminator 2. Nice. Another Terminator 2 reference this week.
Yes, so many references.
But John, do you want to tell us what they gave us in this episode with your synopsis?
Sure. After his second bullet wound at the hands of Willis Stryker, Luke Cage's wounds begin to turn septic. As he reunites with Claire Temple, they become increasingly desperate to find a way of removing the Judas bullet shrapnel. And in so doing, they head back down south to Georgia and Dr. Noah Bernstein as Luke begins to weaken. Elsewhere in Harlem, in the vacuum of Cornell Stokes' murder, an uneasy alliance forms between Mariah, Shades, and Diamondback. At a meeting of the local crime bosses, Diamondback kills all of them except Domingo Colon and only spares Mariah Dillard after she proves her worth. Misty Knight is hauled in front of a police psychologist who evaluates her breakdown on the job. As Knight is released and tasked to find Luke Cage, he arrives at Bernstein's house where, using Reva's data stick from Cage's chain, Bernstein hopes to try and remove the bullet fragments. As he lowers Luke Cage into a boiling tank of acid, the pain becomes too much as the ECG flatlines. Beep. Wow. Another death of Luke Cage, or another injury. He's gone from indestructible, unbreakable to an out-and-out wuss at this stage. I mean, he's getting shot here, shot there,
melted here, melted there.
Exactly. The idea of having a nice acid bath, I mean, it must be great for the complexion, but dreadful if it goes a bit too far.
Definitely. I don't know whether he's a wuss, because they made a great touch in this, and again, listeners, we're starting at the end of the episode because it's the 3rd episode in a row where Luke is dead, effectively, at the end of the episode.
Or injured, at least. Yeah. In this case, it's kind of
it's flat lines, right? But they made a great little touch there where Claire tells him beforehand, if the pain gets too much for you, make a fist and I'll stop the procedure immediately. And just after he flatlines, the last thing he does with his hand is make a fist. So only death is too painful for Luke Cage, effectively. So I like that touch.
Yeah, cool little touch. But with that, Derek, what is your first point?
My first point is the relationship between Will Stryker and Shades. This was pretty unexpected because we hadn't really seen the two of them together in the entire season so far. We've only seen Shades dealing with Cottonmouth a couple of times and talking about Diamondback, so we've never really seen the two of them interact together. I was really surprised at the disdain that Shades seems to have for him. He's respectful of him as his boss, but you can tell a few times that he's kind of going, I really wouldn't have handled it this way. And Diamondback also, the first thing he does with Shades is point a gun at his head, to shoot him. So he's only saved by Zip coming into the room and making a case for his life.
Yeah, basically. I mean, this is a really interesting little turnaround or twist or something, which Diamondback blames Alvarez, Shades, for the death of Cottonmouth. You know, ultimately it was on his watch.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he believes the cooked up tale that Shades and Mariah have, or whether he knows the truth, because there's that great moment where, you know, he does question that story that has been said by Shades as to what happened to Cottonmouth. So this is a really interesting little development, because he has the gun to his head, and it's one that's kind of slightly unexpected. And I mean, I'm calling it a nice little twist, but I'm wondering if a little bit more kind of, background or a little bit of signposting to say that maybe their relationship wasn't quite as solid in terms of, you know, right-hand man to Diamondback than we had previously thought. It may have been useful. It certainly would have put the death of Cottonmouth Stokes at the hands of Mariah and the cover-up by Shades into a different perspective. It's certainly, at this moment in time, Diamondback purely thinks that Shades was trying to make a play to own the club and to effectively kind of start his own little kingdom, crime kingdom on his own. But, you know, it's a nice development. I actually do really like it, but I think it would have been nice just to have had something, signposted maybe a couple of episodes earlier or something. Even if ultimately it was that a few times where Shades did sort of kind of the stir down or the reprimand of Cottonmouth, that possibly it was Willis Stryker. That had come in and done that. And maybe that there was, you know, some kind of explanation which showed that, okay, Diamondback actually really liked Cottonmouth because despite some of his flaws, he got the job of selling guns done and the money made. And maybe that there was a tenser relationship with Shades could have come out from that as well.
So, agreed.
Definitely a nice little twist, I thought, but unexpected. A surprise.
And the fact that Diamondback calls out immediately when he comes in that, what are you doing getting Mariah to do your dirty work? So he clearly knew that Shades didn't want Cottonmouth in the picture. He's been making a play for Cottonmouth for a while, is what it seems like from Diamondback's point of view. So that was quite interesting that he's kind of known that this was on the plate, but has called off, maybe called off Shades a couple of times from doing anything about it. And now he's pushed Mariah to do the killing, basically, is what the Diamondback is saying to him.
But the thing is, Shades is still pretty much an enigma from a character development point of view.
Definitely,
yeah.
All we know, he was in jail.
Yeah.
We know he knew Luke, or Carl Lucas, sorry. He then somehow joined up with Diamondback. We know...
Or was with Diamondback before he went into prison.
True. Yep. That could be another possibility. But we never knew that Luke wouldn't have known him back then. Because he would have known him then in prison, but he didn't know him in prison.
Yeah.
So, we don't know how that works, but okay, yes. I bow to your wisdom on that one. It may be.
No, because Stryker did say that everything that happened to Luke in prison was at his hand and by his will. So, that's why I thought that Shades already worked for him when Carl Lucas met him.
Yeah. But for me, one of the things, I think Theo Rossi's playing the character of Shades as a character who has an ace up his sleeves, and he's just not showing it yet.
Yeah.
He has a secret, he's not telling someone. Is he powered? Maybe not now, I don't know. My theory of that he was powered, maybe it's just a good stare down he's really good at. I don't think he may be powered now, but I'd love to be wrong.
Or maybe he's just hiding his eyes behind the shades just because he doesn't want to see his boss see him roll his eyes at some of the actions that he makes, where he's just like, oh no, please don't shoot another person in the head.
No, don't knife them.
But he's able to keep his whole face straight, but the eyes would just give him away.
Just rolling. But no, I think he's a great character, and it's just, I've said it once, I've said it in the last episode, would have loved a bit more exposition on Diamondback, and I think this also relates, as John said, to the relationship between the two. I think that, again, it would have been more impactful if this was played out slightly longer, because now it just has us chasing our tail, kind of asking, but I thought they were best friends, or they were right-hand man. Okay, yes, but it sets Shades up as a liar now. So, is he playing Mariah? Was he playing Diamondback? Was he playing Cottonmouth? Like, whose side is who's he working for? What was his plan?
Yeah.
Like, was he trying to get Cottonmouth's empire and then Diamondback copped on?
Yeah.
Or is this been a plan of Diamondback all along to put Mariah in place to get this around? Like, it's just, there's too many potential threads to kind of, I don't like it signposted. I agree. So a certain signpost would have been great, but I think now we're in the middle of a crossroads and we don't know which avenue to take.
Yeah.
And I think hopefully they will explain this a bit more. Again, like, just who is Shades? Yeah. Why is he there? That kind of thing. That will give us a bit of background.
It almost feels like we need another flashback, actually.
Yes.
I don't know whether we're going to get that, but it does feel like one of the episodes from here on into the end of the series does actually need to be a flashback to bring some of these together, or it certainly needs to be explained over the course of the next few episodes. Definitely.
I'd like to see a flashback to Willa Stryker and Carl Lucas when they were younger. See the two of them working together, so we get a little bit of background. I think it's going to happen. I think that's exactly what's going to happen, maybe in the next episode or the episode after. And we did see both names in the credits for one of the episodes that those characters weren't in. So I'm presuming we will see a young Carl Lucas and a young Willa Stryker in a future episode. Possibly the next episode called Take It Personal. It's very likely that Willa Stryker has taken something personal, so that title alone is telling me there's a possibility that's where the flashbacks come.
Absolutely. But that was certainly one of my points as well, was that about Shades and Diamondback's relationship being more fraught, definitely. But Chris, what's your first point?
So I'm going to redact part of my statement on Diamondback in the last episode.
Okay.
Now, I'm not fully redacting it.
Okay.
I'm not fully saying, no, I wholeheartedly support this villain. No, but...
I can redact it. I can edit it out of the podcast so nobody will ever have heard it.
Yeah, it's okay.
No, I won't.
No, because we like to show my foibles. This was a good introduction to Diamondback, this episode.
Yes.
This is where we saw, rather than the Cesar Romero, Jack Nicholson type of Joker villain, crazy, unhinged that we saw in the last episode, this is the Heath Ledger villain.
Right.
This is he's sadistic, he's slightly crazy, he's violent.
Yes.
That I can understand. That is a character who fits in with the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
And he even does a trick. It's not a card trick, but he even does a trick with the gun at the start with one of Zip's guys, where he takes his fingers out of his jacket, points the fingers at him and shoots him with a gun in his other hand, which I thought was cool. I saw the gun when he was walking into the room, unfortunately, so it was kind of given away, but I did like the idea of it, where you think he shot someone with his fingers. That's quite fun.
Yeah. I didn't actually see the gun, so I was like, he's got powers.
He's got powers, yeah.
I was like, yay, someone else is gonna... No. Because he would have used it in a fight previously.
Yeah. I saw the gun as well. This is another one of my points. Just, I think Diamondback in this episode, again, it's seeing more of this character on screen and seeing who he is and what he does. And I mean, that moment in the club, in the office, was just superb. You know, the whole idea of the 48 laws of power. He's kind of, there's that callback to when Cottonmouth was underneath the picture of B.I.G. It's slightly different. It's a slightly different perspective. but the same thing happens, where you get the crown going, on top of his head, which was really, really good. You know, he certainly pulls no punches. He's sort of, you know, this is where he threatens, Shades with the gun after basically saying the 49th law of power is he's not dead, Luke Cage, until I have his body, basically. Yeah. Like, really, really good.
That's kind of a law for Marvel. I've heard actually a lot of people talk about Marvel comic books like that, where if you don't see the body, they're not dead. And Marvel movies, because people come back to life all the time in comic books.
Yep.
And it's always one of those, unless there's a funeral, they're not coming back.
And even if there's a funeral.
And even then, there's only 2 characters in the Marvel Universe, I think, that have never come back. Uncle Ben and
Goliath.
Goliath's never come back as well.
Yeah.
That's right.
Which, pretty sure.
I'm sure they're all coming back very soon.
But Uncle Ben always gets resurrected, in the billionth retelling of the Spider-Man origin.
That's true. Yes. There's always an Uncle Ben in the Spider-Man movies in there.
He's actually Uncle Anthony now. Or Uncle Tony.
Uncle Tony Stark. Of course. Yes. Very true.
Yep.
John, do you want to give us your next points?
Yeah, it's the Misty Knight deconstruction, the interview with her by Dr. Gabe Kasner, who's played here by John Scurty, who was in Rescue Me, which I loved. I loved that show.
And I loved him particularly in that show. Yeah. He just played so well off Dennis Leary. Just a great character.
Yeah, well, he was Lou, Ken Lou Shay. And yeah, I loved him in Rescue Me. He, as you say, he played off Dennis Leary really well. Really good sort of sense of humor within that show. And here he plays a really different kind of character, and I really enjoyed it. I loved the fact that, you know, he comes out with "You're already broken" to Misty Knight. She thinks she can battle this off and sort of hard nose him and really put up the shutters and really, you know, fight it. But he challenges her to say, like, you're already broken. The question is, how broken are you, and can you be fixed?
Yeah.
You know, he uses different things against her. Like, he uses the basketball analogy of, you know, why bench yourself at this stage. He talks about things and hands her the photograph to ask her, and talks about losing control. You know, he knows that she wants to be in control, and it breaks her ultimately. You know, he talks about career suicide. I loved this. I thought it was a really excellent little piece within this episode, which was just interspersed, showing the vulnerability of Misty Knight, who doesn't want to show any of that at the hands of this psychologist.
Yeah.
And I just thought this was a really good deconstruction of this character in this interview. Ultimately, Priscilla, you know, she is, because she owns up that she lost control, she is given her badge back, she is given her gun and told to effectively go and track down and bring back Luke Cage. Even though she's still fighting it, and I love that about Misty Knight, she's still saying, but what about Mariah?
Yeah.
You know, she's still out there. She's still...
What about the guy who pointed a gun at my head?
Yeah, exactly. She's still fighting. She's still being Misty Knight. She's still not wanting to leave any thread loose, ultimately. But I just thought this whole interview sequence was really good.
Yeah, definitely. And I like that it all ended with Misty back with her wall, takes down all the pictures from the wall except for Cornell Stokes, the guy with the gun who she doesn't know, as well as Stryker, Mariah, and Luke Cage. They're her 4 people that she is going to be following up on, regardless of if she's told it's going to be Luke Cage, that she has to go after him. She knows these 4 people are connected in some way.
Yeah, but again, they're kind of, after literally just being given her badge back and told, go do this one thing.
Yeah.
She does the exact opposite.
Well, yeah.
She's like, I'm going to do this one thing, plus these 3 others at the same time. Don't worry, it won't matter.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I love the scene as well. The confession, the very end, I was saying to you guys when after we just finished watching it, it was a bit jarring, the hard cuts and the editing.
Right.
Just because I wasn't sure, I was expecting that this was all in her head, what she was saying, and then she was just going to say nothing, or say something very aloof. But it was just, no, she was actually saying them, it was just the hard cuts made it look like different parts of her personality,
Right.
etc. I get it
That
now.
it could be a dream or something. Yeah.
But it was just more, it felt to me, it was the dream, then she was going to say something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. But again, a great moment for Simone Missick again. She's had it almost every episode because I just love this actress.
Definitely.
I love this character. But a great moment when she's saying, this man put a gun to my head, about to take away everything that's important to me, and laughed his whole way through it. That's why she's so angry. That's why she's so pissed. That's why she lost control. Excellent. Really well played. Really, really good scene.
So Derek, what's your next point?
My next point is just that we finally get a bit more detail about Riva, about the thumb drive, all from Dr. Burstein, when they get to his house. I really like the idea that we were wrong about Riva's involvement in the creation of Luke Cage. I'd said one of the big changes from the comic book is that Luke goes into this program to try and knock some years off his time in prison. But this time what they changed in the show was that it's all Riva's fault. If it hadn't been for her, he wouldn't have been pushed into the program. He wouldn't have been changed in the way he was. It's not actually correct. It looks like even without Riva, as Dr. Burstyn says, without her, it still would have happened. He was already earmarked. The reason he was effectively being groomed for it was because he's a strong person, which they'd seen from the fights, in the fight club, I suppose, underneath the prison. They had already earmarked him for that. I thought that was really interesting, that he would never have gotten out of this, situation, that Riva didn't push him into it. So she's not at fault here. It's not her fault, that he is Luke Cage. She did save his life, and it came a little bit earlier than expected. He may have just died if it wasn't for the security guard twisting the knobs up too high. He may have just died. But I like that we get a little bit of that extra story. And obviously then the thumb drive, which we talked about in the episode. If we didn't get an answer to that, I think you guys were saying, if you didn't get an answer to the thumb drive, and it being more important, then it would have ruined that episode for you. At least now we do know that this contains all the information that Burstyn had lost in Seagate. He now can replicate some of the things he was doing, and it obviously contains all the rest of the stuff. And I like his reaction when he gets the thumb drive is, she died for this, didn't she? Because he knows the importance of what's on there. So we'll learn more, I'm sure, now that he has the thumb drive available to him. But I like that this thread is continuing from Jessica Jones and from the show.
It was from the flashback. I mean, that was one of the things I hoped that they would get further explained, and we have that here. I really I enjoyed this seeing the use of this drive and Luke Cage actually being hugely protective over it. There was part of me that wasn't entirely sure whether, when him and Claire Temple were talking about, do you trust Burstein? And they both kind of go no. And Luke, comes straight out and says, well, kill him if you think you need to in order to protect Riva's hard drive.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of was like, ooh, okay. I didn't expect it to be that absolute and sort of trial without jury type of thing.
Right.
I mean, I'm not too sure whether they're wrong about Burstein and whether he can be trusted. Certainly now that after losing all his research, he's suddenly got it back again. You wouldn't know how that might affect him. But I was thinking, it seemed in episode 4 that him and Riva actually were a good team.
Yeah.
And so I would have thought Luke Cage would have maybe recognized that and not necessarily say, kill him, kill them all, kind of. He got a bit but then he was about to get lowered into an acid bath. I suppose.
True. I was trying to think back on...
Was it deep fried or was it rotisserie? I can't remember.
Like deep fried like a turkey, apparently. That's a thing. We don't deep fry turkeys in Ireland.
Nope.
I have heard about it in America, but I've never experienced it, I must say. But no, I was trying to think back on the episode and trying to see where the point was. What was it that Burstyn said to Luke that could have made him suspicious of him? And what he said is that we developed a lot of weapons for the army. We developed bulletproof equipment using the same technique that we used on you. So I think just the inference there from Luke is that if he gets this technology in his hands again, he will develop an army of Luke Cages, which will be unstoppable. Luke says, I don't want one of me on every corner of every street. So I think that's the inference. I think it's almost a dropped line in amongst some of the explanation and other exposition that's going on during that scene. But I think that's the line that Luke is, makes Luke react, or at least makes Claire react to him. So I think that's the one.
Yeah. And what I found interesting was, the complete change. This has nothing to do with the Captain America formula anymore. Mm-hmm. So it's a unique change. Yeah. I assumed they were going to go down that. The Super Soldier Initiative has nothing to do here.
Yeah.
This is about building bulletproof humans to a degree. And they were weapons manufacturers, and now they're, to a degree, doing the same thing, but with humans.
Okay? Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And the one thing I'll put my hand down and say, they explained the powers better now.
Yes.
I will say that now, because we're on this topic. They explained it to my satisfaction now, and I think that's better. I think, again, this is the detriment of us not binge watching a binge themed show.
Yes. Sorry.
Absolutely.
Sorry again, guys. Sorry.
It's okay. But I just wanted to redact how could they do this?
Yes.
And I was like, okay, well, thank you.
We're normally so good at predicting stuff.
We are awful at predicting stuff. Absolutely awful at predicting it. But it doesn't stop us, which is good. No, I agree with you, Chris. I think when you're looking back on episode 8, where Claire is trying to explain what's happening to Luke, again, you understand she's not actually there. She doesn't know where everything came from. She's trying to pick it up from the little bits and pieces she's investigating, I suppose. And then you meet the character who's actually involved in all of the experiments. So, of course, he knows what happened. He knows
absolutely
the creation. So, yeah, that explanation is far better than the one they tried to give to Claire to explain what was going on.
Yeah,
absolutely. And actually, I really liked in this episode how when Claire is looking through this USB on her laptop in the diner, that she's being really cagey about it. Like, she's not telling Luke that she's looking through it, and, she really tries to hide that from him. I thought that was really good. And I wondered I think in my notes I said the plot thickens. I wondered whether it was going to kind of drive a wedge between the two of them, or, she would get more suspicious or something like that. But then obviously in the end, it's all released, down at, in Georgia.
Yeah.
At birth signs. So I liked that moment though in the diner. It really was a nice little touch just to see that, she's kind of, yes, she likes Luke. Yes, she's going to help him, but she's also just trying to find a few things. And obviously find out that the abalone sea creature, has been used in the experiment.
Interesting. I wonder if Namor would be happy about that.
Tie-in.
You never know. The Namor Netflix series coming in 2022 or something.
2028, I think.
Maybe. Chris, do you want to give us your next points?
Yeah, I'm going to call out something that probably our listeners are screaming. So we brought up a topic in kind of episode 1, episode 2 of this when we were reviewing it, talking about how, Luke Cage is a great superhero show, but Cheo Coker, he's kind of settled this in a real world today type situation, and his belief that a bulletproof black man is what the world needs right now to showcase some of our current socio-economic issues that are going on.
Yeah.
I'm skirting the issue and I'm just going to dive into it. The scene when Luke is walking down the road, a hooded black man is walking down the road, not annoying anyone, in what seems to be an affluent area.
Yeah.
And then is pulled over by 2 cops.
Yeah.
That is obviously, this was a political raison d'etre. This was a showcase piece of getting a very topical issue out in front of millions of people. It was just beautifully well done in that he showed both sides. Because I'm saying, so he showed the side where Luke was, wrongfully accosted almost. Well, it wasn't wrongfully accosted, but because he is a wanted man. But he hit one of the cops and then saw that the other cop was going to shoot and then protect the other man.
Yes.
And then he threw them. But the only piece that the media have picked up and are showing is Luke throwing the last cop.
Yes.
They're not showing the rest of the video.
Yeah.
So that's one side of the story. But then he goes further, and probably the writer as well. They show the cop side when Missy's being interrogated in the line of, they don't want us, but until they need us.
Absolutely.
And they'll always give out about us and hate us and fear us.
Yeah.
Like, and that is why I'm very happy with this show in terms of they're showing both sides.
Absolutely.
If they had gone one side or the other, you would have got a large proportion of America, depending on which side they fell, up in arms. But they politically touched on a topic that is quite raw at this point in time.
Yes.
In a tasteful way.
Yeah.
In a superhero show on Marvel Netflix, on Netflix, but have gone, well, look, there's two sides to every coin. You need to look at both. And you as a viewer are shown both.
Yes. Yeah.
In again, tasteful. And also it wasn't shoehorned in. This was written into the story where it made sense.
Absolutely. There's no villainous side shown to the cops. They're not people that are in Diamondback's pocket being sent out to kill Luke Cage or anything like that. These guys are people that see what they think from the back is a vagrant, a drunk person walking down the middle of a street. He's not walking on the sidewalk or the pathway, I guess. So that does throw up a flag, I presume, for any police officer, regardless of race. They're stopping a guy who's walking down the middle of the road who looks drunk. Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. At the outset, he has his back to them and his hood up and his hands in his pocket. So there's no telling whether that person is white, Asian, American, Black American, or whatever. They just think he's loitering, or maybe he's drunk. Yeah.
And walking down the middle of the street, it's a flag. You know, you've got cars going past every time. You want to get that guy off the road. You understand that. The flip obviously is that he's asked for ID. Luke turns to him, obviously wanting to protect his identity, and do I need ID to walk down the street? This is really a clear reference to the biggest, probably, shooting that happened, which was Trayvon Martin, a young kid walking down the street with his hood up, gets shot by police officers for pretty much doing nothing. He's a young kid who's had no criminal record whatsoever. The change here, obviously, as you say, Chris, is that Luke Cage does have a criminal record. He's the most wanted man in Harlem at the moment. He's on every news station, telling you that he's going to be picked up, but it is handled so well, I think, the scene. As you say, a bulletproof black man in the US at the moment it's such a strong character. It's such a good commentary on what's going on, but they don't skimp on, as you say, the other side of the argument, that there are police out there. They are trying to save. They are trying to protect. They are built from different things than I am, because I wouldn't, go down in the street and have people shooting at me, just to help people I don't know. It's something that I'm not built to do. That's not my job. But they do this every day, and they hate the fact that people hate them constantly until they're needed. It's a really good little other side of the argument.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think the balance shown in the show is really good, because I think it really needs to have that. I mean, there's part of me that felt slightly uncomfortable seeing it play out, just simply because of, it's topical. It's been reported, in the news over here, about what's going on in the US. So it's been a big story, both for the US, but also internationally. So, I mean, it did kind of feel slightly uncomfortable seeing it, but actually it was handled incredibly well, I thought.
But the end of the scene, the thing that has lasted, is the footage that's being shown on television is of a former superhero, a person that is worshipped by the people of Harlem for his super strength, attacking police officers and throwing them away. So again, there is still that commentary there. It's handled really well in the show, and I'm glad it was. It is difficult to watch, but again, it is showing that the media have used this particular section of the video and broadcast that to the wider world. So at the moment, for anybody that's not obviously watching a TV show, or the people that exist in this universe in Harlem in this Netflix show, what they've seen is a person they thought was a hero attacking police officers.
Yeah.
So it is a direct commentary on what's going on in the real world America. So
The final point on this as well is the double standard and sexism in the workplace that
Yes.
Misty calls out
it's a great one.
in her interrogation or interview, whatever you want to call
Definitely,
it.
yeah.
Like, so subtle, I nearly forgot until then I started thinking back about this and went, oh God, yeah. And it wasn't actually even that subtle.
Yeah.
It was just, unfortunately, the bias is, you go, yeah, that's kind of true, yeah. There is a bias there. And it's like, wow, okay. She just randomly calls it out, and you're like, because they don't make such a huge deal about it, it's not a big, huge topic within, for like 10 minutes. It's very short.
Yeah.
It's an off-the-cuff remark she says back to him. It's kind of swept slightly, but it's still there.
Yeah.
This actually makes sense of putting it in there as a strong woman in a position of power.
Yeah.
Two, actually, both Missy and her boss.
Mm-hmm.
And they do call out the double standards
Yeah.
of a woman sleeping with someone versus a man sleeping with someone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, really good point and another well-handled scene. John, do you want to give us your final point?
Yeah, nature abhors a vacuum. I really love this scene between Mariah and Shades in the morgue. In particular, I just thought Mariah speaking to Cornell whilst he's under the blanket, she did feel remorseful. Felt like it was eating at her.
Yeah.
What she had done. She seemed quite sort of distant, while she's kind of touching, his body underneath the sheet. And I kind of like the way how Shades sneaks in really and hears some of it. And it's not until the door starts to creak that she kind of pulls herself back within herself, and sort of stands up. And I love the fact that here, she is being told, she's being instructed here that you are now the business owner of this club. You are here to keep Diamondback's clients happy like Cottonmouth did, and did so well. And that's why Diamondback, at this meeting then of the local crime bosses, is, and has kind of set up that, he's lost someone who could do his work. I love the phrase that he uses, you die or you buy. And Cottonmouth was able to get them to buy.
Yeah.
And that's what he could do. And Mariah has to prove herself here.
Yeah.
But again, it's from Shades telling her, you need to effectively step up to this plate, be strong, and show your worth here, to Diamondback, I think to the local crime bosses. I don't know whether they knew that Diamondback was going to gate crash this party, but certainly maybe Shades did, but I don't think Mariah did.
No. Yeah.
And neither did the other crime bosses either. But I loved her here, in this role, going from the remorseful to the stoic, to just sort of having to do what she needed to do.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah, no, really good, really good scene again, with Mariah and Cottonmouth, definitely.
Yeah, for me, Mariah's evolution has been one of the most rewarding journeys
Definitely.
of the season. And again, the performance by Alfre Woodard is just, she shows that depth. Agree completely. For me, this is just a continuation of the Netflix tradition, I want to call it, of just setting up and great villainous characters, showing the backstory, showing their evolution with Wilson Fisk. It's just Cottonmouth.
Mm-hmm.
They've done really well. For me, Mariah is clearly the more villainous antagonist because she is devolving from this upstanding councilwoman to her own version of Mama Mabel.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's something about this character that it's played by Alfre Woodard. I've known her from stuff beforehand, but in the presence of Marshall Ali as Cottonmouth, you were focused on him as being the villain, and she stepped out of that shadow. Early on, like episode 3 or so, she was stepping out of his shadow, and you were realizing that there was more to this character. Episode 4 with the flashbacks, obviously you were seeing, more of her character as well. But if you had taken Cottonmouth out of this show and had her as the villain, this would be exactly the arc of Wilson Fisk was in Daredevil season 1, where he's building up all the way and then suddenly explode and she's out and in the wild. That kind of arc, you know?
Absolutely. And we see this several times as well, where her aide talks about using the death of her cousin for political advantage, and she calls it out on him, and he's to an extent unsure what she's going to say, and she kind of goes, good, take the rest of the day off. You know, you've learned a lot. You're showing your worth to her.
Yes.
Really good. And then you have effectively her wanting to control the media angle on what's happened. And then you see her use that to convince Diamondback then that she is worth retaining and having around. I.e., you can come out of the shadows and you can sell to the police.
Yeah.
Because, again, and she's not just focusing on Luke Cage here. She's actually just going, all of these superheroes who are running around doing their thing, and the normal scheme of things is all upset and unbalanced. That reminded me to an extent of kind of Batman and Gotham, that notion that, the regular criminals can no longer just simply do the good business that they wanted to do, because the apple cart has been upset and they've got these superhuman, superhero enhanced individuals that can stop them so much more easily.
Absolutely.
So
it reminded me of
really good.
It reminded me of some of the plot of Batman v Superman this year. Effectively, the whole concept of what do you do when there's a bulletproof person in your city if you can't invent a weapon to kill them and take them out. There's another great bit of commentary. You called out quite a few there earlier on, Chris, but another great bit of commentary here on the drugs industry, I think, is what Mariah's commenting on. She's saying, effectively, if you show yourself killing Luke Cage and then also have the bullets to sell to people that want to do the same thing, it's like the drug industry creating the virus and then providing the cure. That's another theory that a lot of people have about some of big pharma, that they keep diseases going so that they can make all the money off the back of it, just like some criminals. So that's her suggestion to Diamondback, is that he now becomes legitimate by creating a need for something and being the only supplier, and that will give him even more money than he could ever possibly wish for. So I thought that was quite an interesting piece of commentary. But Chris, do you want to give us your final point?
Yeah, I'm going to wrap up my points with obviously the one of the final scenes, which is where we see Diamondback come in and take out all the gang leaders.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah. For me, this felt staged, maybe. I don't know. Was this planned?
Like a setup.
Almost like a setup. Yeah, exactly. Was this planned? Was it not planned? Fantastic. One bit I did like the call out that they wouldn't invite the Chinese. Madame Gao is too crazy. Fair point. Don't bring her.
They have their own stuff going on in Hell's Kitchen. I actually thought that was a reference to Daredevil, to be honest, and what he was doing down there and taking a lot of the drug kingpins out. But yeah, Madame Gao was the leader of that gang. So yeah, probably don't want her at the table.
Well, no, because she just picked the knife that was thrown her way and just doing.
Yes.
It's like, no. Fantastic. Showed the villainous, crazy, violent side of Diamondback. And I think it was a fantastic way of just kind of showcasing that, yes, while he is psychotic and slightly deranged, he has ideas and plans for all of this. And he just took out 4 guys quite quickly without any of their cops. Oh, he took out all their guards as well outside, he said.
Yeah. I don't know whether he does have a plan. I'm not too sure whether he's just aligned himself with some very good people like Shades, and then he just goes crazy and just expects it all to be sorted afterwards, Like he kind of says, I'll kill anyone. Just come at me, basically. I'll take them all out. If anybody has a problem, come at me. I'll take you out, That's constantly his mantra. Did any of the 4 guys actually say anything to him that could have provoked him to shoot them in the head? Because they didn't really. He kind of said the first 2 don't buy from him. The other 2 that he killed,
They were doing a lot of groveling. They were like, definitely, I think they knew their number was up.
Yeah.
but they were groveling, so you never know. Yeah.
And then last guy that he leaves alive, that seems to be just kind of a flip of the coin decision. He says, I have no problem with your friends down south, so I'm not going to kill you. Lucky day, right? Doesn't mean tomorrow's not going to be his lucky day.
Well, that's true, yeah.
You know, but yeah, no, I really like the scene. Again, it did strike me like another scene from The Dark Knight with the Joker coming in on the gangs and killing a criminal, as he walks in. Even he didn't kill 4 in a go. A little bit like, Kill Bill maybe with, Lucy Liu's character lopping off the head of one of the, other heads of the crime families to prove she's the leader, I suppose. So a little bit like that, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just, for me, I find, you're right, is he actually the mastermind? Mm-hmm. Like, is he the guy that we were led to believe to be the new kingpin?
Yeah.
To a degree. But he doesn't seem it. He
just seems crazier.
Yeah.
He's not as level-headed as Wilson Fisk was. Definitely. You feel like he's kind of murdered his way to the top rather than done great business dealings to get there.
So he's what was it, the two books he read? The Bible and the 49 Ways to Power?
48 Ways.
Yeah.
He found the 49th himself.
He did. So that was our book watch for this episode.
Exactly.
It's back.
The Bible.
That's it.
Along with the 48 Laws of Power.
Yes. Very cool. Very cool. My final point, it's gotta be the actual Luke Cage in a bath of acid. And it doesn't work. Like, this was their last and only plan as he flatlines. What could possibly be next here? Is there even any time to set up another experiment to save Luke Cage? I'm the one that keeps speculating that Luke Cage is going to die before the end of the season, even though I know he can't. And we've got Defenders coming up, which we know he's confirmed to be in. So, what else can they do here?
But maybe it's that moment where he does die from the injuries, but then slowly comes back to life because the regeneration happens.
That's very likely, yeah.
Not zombie Luke Cage, but
Marvel Zombie starts here.
But it's that notion that, yes, he looks dead, but then over the course of a day or 2 days, his body begins to recover, and then you get the beat of the heart starting, and actually maybe at that stage the septic wounds have healed, because, you know, he does have regenerative properties and healing powers. So once he's died, does that kind of continue a bit like your nose and ears keep on growing?
Or is it going to be like they put him in the coffin and then literally a couple of hours later the dirt seems to rise off his coffin?
Yes, Superman.
Okay, sorry.
That's been done. They can't use that.
Can't use that twice.
No, I think I'm not sure if it's even going to be days. I think it will be minutes for his recovery after that. Because otherwise, won't his brain die? So I presume he won't be dead for more than a couple of minutes, and then heart restarted. And off he goes again, hopefully. But yeah, I did shudder at the scene, the idea of him going to an acid bath. What Dr. Burston says to him beforehand, you know, how badly can this go, says Luke to him. And he goes, well, the pain of it could be so bad as your skin boils off your body that you might want to put a bullet in your brain. And because you're bulletproof, well, the bullet will probably just bounce off anyway, so you won't be able to do anything about it. That's not good bedside manner from Dr. Burston at all.
He just shoved a big needle to the back of his throat.
Oh yeah.
That was fabulous. The puncture of the mucous membrane.
No.
Yeah.
That looks so difficult.
You see, I thought there was a bit more work that was required there, because he was trying to get the DNA to see what he needed to do in order to replicate certain conditions, but see how he could almost like back engineer the process.
Yeah.
Whereas the acid bath thing just seemed to be like the first step, where it was like, well, let's see if we can soften it up with this acid.
Well, exactly.
We need to tenderize the cage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Next we'll get a big steak tenderizer. Doink, doink, doink. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens now. But I think with that, are there any notes for this episode? Derek?
My first note is seeing the Delphonics on stage in the club. We got another live band in there. Love the Delphonics. Didn't I Blow Your Mind this time? One of my favorite songs. Really, really love that tune. Love seeing them live. The guys have been going for a long time, and it's just great to see them live in the club. Pretty cool moment.
When they also on the track of Jackie Brown as well.
Yes, they're on the soundtrack with Jackie Brown. Another great tune on there as well. So yeah, great band. Go check them out.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, any notes?
No, I've actually strangely used all my notes in this episode. There were some nice callbacks, as I said about the Super Soldier being changed, but nothing directly at this point.
Got a couple little other ones, really, which is just, I think for the Misty Knight Netflix show, which will hopefully come. I think her tagline has already been created in this show, which is, I don't seek justice, I stalk it.
Oh, perfect. You've just taken one of my notes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, the final one is just about Misty. Her description of her night with Luke Cage, and their coffee drinking was fantastic.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that scene as well. John, do you want to give us your notes?
No, you've stolen them all from me.
I did not mean to steal all your notes. I'm sorry about that.
But Derek, do you defend this episode of Luke Cage?
This is an interesting one. This is the longest episode, I think, of Luke Cage, and I think they were trying to accomplish a lot. There's a set of scenes which I think are fantastic. But there's a lot going on in the episode. I'm not sure overall whether I defend this episode specifically. But this is a bingeable show. This is a show where you would watch 3 or 4 episodes. If you weren't podcasting like us, you'd watch 3 or 4 episodes back to back. So it probably wouldn't feel like an overly long episode because you've probably watched 2 or 3 hours of the show. So I'm going to defend it. I'm going to say I do defend this episode because there was nothing actually wrong with the episode other than maybe a little bit too much in there, for this particular one. But Chris, do you defend this episode of Luke Cage?
I do, strangely. The last episode I was very 50-50. With this episode, I'm more 70-30, 60-40. Again, yes, the length was a potential issue for me. It feels like they probably pulled parts of scenes from earlier or later episodes and trying to just shoehorn them in to make this an hour and 5. Mm-hmm. I think what we're missing some explanations at this point, and as we get further into it, we're probably not going to get them. But then with Mariah's evolution, with Shade's secret, whatever that will be, hopefully, with the correct introduction of Diamondback, and then with Luke's power origin scientifically explained in a plausible way, it makes it these are the big scenes. And then potentially the biggest reason I really approved of this episode was the skillful way. Oh, sorry, I forgot about Misty's scenes. They were brilliant. But more Chio Coker's skillful way of bringing in police and all that side of things, bringing in shootings and that side of things, and then bringing sexism in the workplace. That for me was skillfully done, tastefully done, and a commentary on today's society. Absolutely. And for that, that's why that knocked it over the line for me. Absolutely.
And another big shout out to Christian Taylor who wrote the episode. Definitely, really well handled.
So John, rounding out the group, do you defend this episode?
I do defend this episode of Luke Cage. I'd give it 3.5 acid baths out of 5.
Ooh, Bernie.
Yeah. But I do think, I absolutely love the character development, so far in this, in the show. Again, for me, standout was with Misty Knight, and the interview with Mariah, and Shade's relationship, and seeing Shade's relationship now with Diamondback. These are fantastic developments. I think the thing is that when I first watched this episode, I wasn't entirely sure whether I had enjoyed it or whether there was much to it at the start, because it is quite long. It is quite drawn out, and I'm not entirely sure to what extent it's carried forward the storyline of Diamondback and Luke Cage. Ultimately, Luke Cage is still wounded and trying to get better. And he was that in the last episode, and he started out with that in effectively episode 7 now. Yeah. And okay, we've heard some teasers in episode 8 and a bit more now in episode 9 with Diamondback, with Luke Cage, but there's nothing concrete. the development is happening in other characters, and that's great. I'm absolutely enjoying it, as I say, for that reason. But I would like to see now a good little push for these two characters, because my concern is that is ultimately the ending. That's episode 13. So it's how the other episodes will deal with that. But I do defend this episode because of the great characters of development. Again, I think, as Chris has said, how the issue with the police and with how women are treated in male-dominated environments, then was really well done.
Definitely.
And has to be applauded. Absolutely. So, I do defend this episode, but I do want to see a bit more of a little bit more on Stryker and Luke Cage, to be honest. Absolutely. I really want to see these two come head to head again.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I'm hoping that the next episode, episode 10, called Take It Personal, I think that episode is where we're going to get the flashbacks to young Willis Stryker and young Luke Cage, and we're going to get that backstory properly laid out for us in that episode, leading us into the last 3 episodes where there is the battle with Willis Stryker. So, really looking forward to that. Thanks so much for joining us, listeners. Really good to have you with us, as always, and thanks for sharing your thoughts. So, on to some feedback for episode 9. There were some suggestions as to what DWYCK could mean, because I was questioning whether I would know what it would mean in the end. The first suggestion comes from Claire Laffer, who says, "Daredevil wants your coffee, Karen," which I like. That's pretty good one. Claire also suggests, "Don't worry, yes, Cottonmouth." Kidding. Cottonmouth is now gone in the show, obviously. Good suggestions, Claire. Jeff Charles also suggested "Do What You Can, Kid." Number of suggestions about that. And in fact, over in the Urban Dictionary, DWYCK is actually listed as "Do What You Can, Kid." I guess they didn't read the article or the interview with Guru saying that it's not that, it's just DWYCK. So I'm still going with that. He is the artist and there's the person behind it. It may have come to now mean "Do What You Can, Kid," because that's a bit more inspiring than DWYCK.
Yeah, absolutely.
And our last piece of feedback comes in from Robert Phillips, who says, "This watching an episode at a time thing is painful now that every episode is ending with the potential death of Luke Cage." So sorry, Robert. That's our fault, isn't it?
It's your fault. I completely feel your pain too, Robert. Yeah. Derek is a harsh podcast editor in this regards to myself and Chris. And if you're following along with each of the episodes, then completely feel your pain. And also, you're really going to love the end of this episode. There's a little thing called, a massive supernatural thing called Doctor Strange that might get in the way of another Luke Cage release.
Mm-hmm. That's very possible. We'll talk about that in a second. Robert also has some other points. He says some of the cool things about the episode: Biggie in the mirror and sitting shot to put his crown on the top of Diamondback is a really cool scene.
Yeah, it definitely reflects what happened with Cottonmouth as well. So really good.
Robert goes on to say, "Shades can't be powered and clearly not as important as he would have us believe as he crumbles before Diamondback." I'm not too sure. There seemed to be a bit of a standoff between the two of them. As I mentioned earlier on in the episode, him standing up to Diamondback and saying, "You don't know who I am," when Diamondback kind of says that to him. Feels like there's going to be a bit of a power struggle between the two of them.
Yeah, there's certainly something about Shades that's still not entirely resolved, not entirely stated at the moment. And it may come to something, or it may come to nothing, but I really hope it comes to something.
Mm-hmm. And then Robert says, "Hearing Misty's backstory, worrying for her life, but no, she survived." Good stuff. Yes,
absolutely.
Nice to know that they didn't continue with that little trick the way through the episodes. Question from Robert, wondering, is Priscilla the IA head corrupt? She keeps pushing badge and gun for one reason only. So interesting. I didn't think about that. I do feel that she has some connections and she is very high up in the department.
She might be more of a pragmatist, more of a realist. As, you move up the chain, maybe you have to balance the political, in this case, the local councillor elements coming from Mariah versus operational and so on. And I do think she's always kind of saying, well, this is where the evidence leads in the way that I interpret it. Mm-hmm. Why aren't you going after Luke Cage? He's the one connected to all of these different, crimes, activities, deaths, whatever, not Mariah Dillard. But of course, it's the gut instinct of Misty Knight that's really driving this. In the same way that we kind of brought that out on our interview with Justin Swain about him being the forensic and the brains, and whilst Misty Knight has got the brains as well, she's got that visual gut and sensory element to the way she does investigations. So I just think Priscilla at this moment in time, there's a little bit of dubiousness about it, absolutely, but I think it's more she's trying to just trade off certain things from a political point of view in Harlem.
Yeah, good points. And the final question from Robert is just asking, is the peer support guy a mirror of Riva? She's been something before a psychologist and was helping prisoners. Had she been a perp before training up, maybe? Like that guy's an ex-cop. So this is the peer support guy who's helping out Misty Knight in trying to get to the reasons to, why she attacked Claire. Yeah, that's a really interesting idea that possibly, the peer support guy is her version of Riva, the person that might help her out of the situation that she's in at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked, how that all sort of flowed, really. And I love the fact that he was on top all the time with regards to that sort of mind battle. You know, Misty Knight is hugely mentally strong, and yet here is a guy coming in, questioning her decision making.
Yeah.
And that kind of foundation. And so, I don't know whether it was so much a support, but maybe she did draw strength ultimately in the end from realizing that she doesn't have to be this, top dog all the time. Yeah. She can, assert herself and then sort of fade into the background and let others take up the reins. And maybe this was one of the things she was trying to be all things policewoman and detective to, all people.
Yeah, totally agree. And as for Misty being a perp before she became a cop, I don't really see it. I see that Misty seems to be someone that has worked through her life to get to where she's gotten to. She feels like a really strong character who probably didn't start off being a criminal and then working her way into the police force. It doesn't feel like that's Misty's journey.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that to me either, just at the moment. But no, that's interesting points that you raise, and some really good kind of perspectives on that whole relationship between Misty and the kind of psychologist. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, we are dropping in these pieces of feedback just before we release episode 9 of Luke Cage. Thanks so much for the feedback. If you want to send in your feedback for episode 10 of the podcast, our review of Take It Personal, episode 10 of Luke Cage, you've got a little bit more time. That's a positive way of spinning it, isn't it, John?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, we will be releasing our review of Doctor Strange, the 2016 movie by Scott Derrickson, to finish off our Fall of Strange, I guess, or Summer of Strange. Yeah.
Yeah, or Autumn of Strange. Yeah.
Possibly.
Or the Halloween of Strange.
Yes. But we'll be releasing that between now and Friday, the 11th of November. And on Friday, the 11th of November, we will return to Luke Cage with episode 10, Take It Personal. So I hope you can wait for that one.
Yep, so thank you so much for all the comments. Keep them coming in.
So I think with that, we will go off to seek justice and stalk it. Like Misty Knight, in the tradition of Misty Knight. So again, it's just to say thank you so much for listening as always. We will be back next time with episode 10, Take It Personal, of Luke Cage. So we'll speak with you next time. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.
Sweet Christmas.
Bye.
You think I'm holding back?
Thanks for listening to Defenders TV Podcast, a TV podcast industries production. Our theme tune's provided by the wonderful Mississippi McDonald and the Cottonmouth Kings. If you want to help out the podcast and you've enjoyed listening to us, there's some really easy ways to do it. If you can share our episodes through your social media channels like Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, or Google+, that gets some extra listeners into us. If you want to leave us a review on iTunes or a rating, just leave a 5-star rating, click the button, or go to iTunes through defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes. We'll take you straight to our page and leave us a review or a rating there. That always helps out independent podcasts. And also, as always, we love to hear your feedback about the show's interaction with our audience is what we really, really love. So you can send us feedback to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.